Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Martin, and today we are talking about the natural order and cosmic consequences. How many times did Sam and Dean break both of those, and what happened because of it? But before we dive into that, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Carol.
Hi, I'm Carol Malcolm, the director of the Urban Fantasy Track at DragonCon. And not only do I cover Supernatural on the track and have since the track began in 2013, but I did watch it. I say I have been, but I have to remember, oh yeah, it's not on all the time now. Well, I guess it is in repeats, but in any case, I did watch it from the very beginning when it first started. A friend of mine said she heard, being a longtime Buffy fan, she said, yeah, people are saying it's like Buffy with boys, or that's what it's going to be like. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll see. And in any case, I did watch it from the beginning. So I've been a longtime fan myself.
Very good. Elektra.
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor. And like Carol, I was there from the very first episode.
Beth.
Hi, I'm Beth Dolgner. I write paranormal cozy mysteries and romantic urban fantasy. And yeah, just like Carol and Elektra said, I tuned in the night the pilot episode aired, and that was the end for me. I've been on board ever since.
I'm the new kid on the block, and what I didn't have in long term, I've tried to make up in obsession. I think I've done pretty well.
You've passed. You've definitely passed.
I'm Gail C. Martin at Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. But all my modern worlds are ones Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. I fell in love with the show halfway through season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months to be able to start live tweeting the beginning of season 12, and went down the rabbit hole, never came back up. Hope I never do. So yeah, definitely made up for it with obsessiveness. So many times from almost the very beginning of the series, at least in season 3 and on, we keep seeing Sam and Dean be cautioned by just about everybody at wrecking the natural order. And then later on, the term cosmic consequences come along. And, you know, for a show that was only supposed to last 5 seasons and lasted 15, clearly somebody here sold their soul to get that extra 10 years. But let's talk a little bit about what the concept of natural order meant when people were throwing it at the Winchesters, and how the Winchesters reacted to that. And then we'll come back around and see how that worked out for them. Carol?
I think that probably what was happening, or what people meant, was, okay, you know, first off, if someone dies, they're supposed to stay dead. That's, you know, that's just the way it goes. So we know that, you know, that's definitely that's definitely one area of importance. But I think also we saw in some of the very earliest parts of the show where you also have the natural order be kind of, it's always us against them. You know, it's always whatever the supernatural problem was, it's always the Winchesters against that, or, you know, it's hunters against evil. But then as things progress, they have to come to realize, well, not all supernatural creatures are evil. So I think when they were being told this is the natural order and you shouldn't mess with it, those are the two things that come to mind for me, at least.
Okay, Elektra.
I think where a good example of where this came home for them was in season 6, Appointment in Samara, where Dean is trying desperately to get Sam's soul back, and he makes a deal with Death, and Death says, all right, I'll get you Sam's soul back, but you've got to wear my ring for 24 hours. And Dean is running around with Tessa the Reaper, and he's okay with killing murderers and thieves, but when it comes down to reaping a 12-year-old girl, he's like, no, I don't want to do that. And he discovers actions have consequences. And people die who weren't supposed to die, and it's his fault.
Okay.
He goes back and he does what he has to do. And when Death discusses cosmic consequences and how they're always screwing things up, it looks like Gene has actually learned the lesson he was supposed to learn. And in exchange, Death goes and gets Sam's soul. It wasn't just go do this thing. It was, I need you to learn this because you guys keep screwing with the cosmic order.
Okay. Beth.
I like what Carol said about a natural order to things, because there's kind of this implied stay in your lane, don't ask questions, to the universe and to the supernatural universe. And Sam and Dean never ever stay in their lane, and they question absolutely everything. And one of the things that I think is interesting about this show is that so many of the things they do that have cosmic consequences, we only really see those consequences through their eyes and their surroundings. And when you get imaginative and step back and look at the world as a whole, like think of like the angels falling from heaven, that happened everywhere, not just where Sam and Dean were. So they did things that had massive implications for the entire world. Or when we get into the parallel universes, that had implications for many worlds. So I think it's when you step back and look at it on that larger scale, like they really wrecked a lot of stuff in their quest to do the right thing.
Well, it's
kind of a lot of toys.
That scene when Adam Bass and his golem are in the car and they're watching Sam and Dean burn, dig the grave and burn the bones. And Adam's just going, they're psychopaths. They're totally psychopaths. And we see it from their viewpoint, and so we understand it, but the outsider watching them, psychopaths.
Pretty messed up.
Yeah. I think one of the first times I remember really hearing the natural order of things, you guys can't screw with the natural order of things, was Gabriel in Mystery Spot, lecturing Sam about how you can't save your brother, you can't undo this, you guys always screw with the way things are supposed to be, and you need to fall in line.
Not do that, yeah.
What the plan is, but you're messing with the natural order. Now, that's kind of funny, given how much, after that, the angels send them back in time to mess with the natural order. And hey, wouldn't it be great if Sam was never born? And hey, wouldn't it be great if the parents never met? Which I would think counts as messing with the natural order. So there's a fair amount of hypocrisy here. And of course, it's really, Kripke's 5-season arc didn't factor in the next 10, I don't think, unless he's, even greater than we think he is. That this was all Chuck's favorite story, and Chuck was, messing with the natural order all the way along to keep his favorite characters in their show on the air, so to speak. So honestly, the whole show is about messing with the natural order. The deals that go from that caused the show in the first place, with Mary making a deal for John, John making a deal for Dean, and on and on. That's all messing with the natural order. It's kind of funny that gets held up as a thou shalt not, when it's like, dude, that's really all we do is mess.
It's like, have you watched the show? Come on. Have you read Chuck's books? Come on. Yeah.
So what are some of the biggest ways the Winchesters messed with the natural order, and what happened because of it? Carol?
Well, I think, from a personal standpoint, it's the times that they made an effort to save each other over everybody else. And, sometimes that didn't work out so well. And other times it was, they had the desire to do it, but they didn't end up messing up things quite as badly, as what was expected. But I think, that there were, instances of other people that when they would see like somebody that they would go to help, say it was a Monster of the Week story, and they would get to go see the result of something that they had done, some particular bad guy that they had stopped, and to be able to see the result that okay, well, it made the lives of these people better. I think for them, that those were the reasons that they tell themselves anyway that they're doing the things that they do. This is kind of what we're there. We're trying to save all these people, but somehow it doesn't always jibe with. But the first person I'm going to save, is my brother. And of course, the whole I think probably one of the big ones was the whole Lilith situation, with her getting free, with Ruby turning on Sam, and all of that. That was certainly one, that had a lot of consequences. I'm sitting here trying to remember back from all 15 years, and another one may occur to me, but that one seemed to be a pretty big one that kind of sticks out, just because of all the havoc that she wrought, on her own, aside from them trying to mess with things to save each other or bring each other back, or where is he? I gotta find, is he in hell? Or the time, I know it's a bad thing to bring up to Gail, at the time that Sam didn't look for Dean. I mean, those all have consequences.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we love about the boys is that they will burn down the world to save each other, until you step back from that and realize the rest of us are in the world that just got burned down to save them.
Right.
And, it's a little dicier. Elektra?
I'm thinking about the time that the first time they killed Death, and they discover it can be done, because I don't want Sam to die, therefore there goes Death. And that sort of changes the whole equation of the cosmic reality for them. The knowledge that you can kill Death. And they walked away with Death's scythe, which is a handy thing to have too.
And it was funny. It was funny too that if you, I don't remember how far in advance of that it was, but there was a previous season where Dean, jokingly refers to, well, we can't kill Death. And I'm thinking to myself, just wait, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, this was on a rewatch, catching that. I mean, I probably heard it. I'm sure I heard it the first time I saw it, but when doing a rewatch after seeing that. Yeah. But you're right. And that moment was so good, because it was a surprise.
Hey, there's somebody on writing that show that was psychic. I mean, they also Sam Walker, Texas Ranger. So there was definitely
that was
psychic involved. There's just no question there.
Well, and Dean says I'm a U.S. Marshal, and that's what he played in the ill-fated movie Rust. Was a U.S. Marshal.
That may still happen. Give it time.
It will, but you got to admit it hasn't had good luck so far.
No.
But we are all wishing them well.
But they clearly have had a psychic on their writing staff.
Clearly,
that explains it. I like that. Yeah,
which is frightening. Apparently, that was part of the deal that Kripke made at the crossroads.
Occam's razor, the simplest explanation, is probably true. They had a psychic. I believe that. Or Chuck really was God. Beth?
So it's funny. I told my husband what the theme of our panel was tonight, and he said, "Oh, so you're going to sit around for an hour and discuss? Well, yeah, I know I screwed up the world, but I did it to save my brother." And I said, "Yeah, pretty much. That's what we're going to talk about." I mean, they really disrupted things on a big level in a lot of ways. I mean, from the time that show started to the time it ended, their world had a brand new god. I mean, and it was because of them. But I would say, I think for me, there's a lot of storylines and a lot of conflict that never would have happened if they had not locked Lucifer in the cage. If they had just kind of left hell alone, there would have been a lot less problems, I feel like. We wouldn't have had a lot of these battles for who gets to control hell. And so I think there's just a lot of, I mean, beyond just human beings. I mean, they had to go and mess with the afterlife, essentially. So it's like there was no sacred ground that they would not tread on in their quest to save each other, or to do what they thought was right, or to try and save the world, whatever it takes.
I think it's interesting because if you take that whole butterfly effect idea into consideration, every action has consequences that ripple out, and we have no idea what the end result of those actions are. And you magnify that by something that is negative, like you get in a car crash, you walk away, the other person is really hurt. Well, that has changed a whole narrative. You start a war. What if the war hadn't happened? That splinter reality has now veered off. It's just rarely so often that two people who aren't heads of state commanding armies get to do this to the rest of us.
That's
Couple of
true.
guys flannel who change history over and over and over again. But I think that I kind of go back to the idea that this whole idea of changing the natural order only seems to be a negative thing to some of the more powerful characters when it's the Winchesters doing it. When it's the angels doing it, when it's the demons doing it, when it's the archangels, well, that's okay. We can completely retcon human history as well as the Winchesters' history, but don't let the peasants, have the controls. And I think that's kind of a big deal, is that Sam and Dean, being the human peasants here, took the controls away from the big boys and said, you're not the only ones who get to mess with this, and we're going to do it too. And it's a really interesting and subversive idea.
It wasn't just the boys, though, and it wasn't just Earth and Hell. They also, through the course of the show, messed majorly with heaven. I mean, Cass messed with heaven, Lucifer messed with heaven, Bobby messed with heaven. The Bobbies are surly, and they are messing with heaven. God, Ash had heaven wired at one point, and was sneaking the boys around to what they wanted. There were all sorts of different things going on in different interpretations of heaven as the series moved on. Dean did his number on purgatory. You're not supposed to get out of there. Never mind the taxi driver that was, shuttling people through there as a backdoor into hell.
And Cass, who had just sucked all the souls out, including the Leviathans.
So there was a lot of changing of the cosmic order for the way we want, whoever the character was wanted it. It wasn't just the Winchesters. They just took a lot of the blame.
Yeah, that's true. And often when they did that, they were put in that situation by bigger players who were trying to force them to do something they wanted them to do. And
Like
Sam and Dean, of course, did.
Zachariah was one of those players who wanted them to do something and blamed them when things went wrong.
Typical upper management.
Yeah.
What other examples come to your mind?
Did you say me? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, of specifics, you mean, of times that of which that some of the other players tried to do this, and or what specifically?
Anything you think is germane to the topic.
Okay. Well, I guess I would say that from the perspective of both heaven and hell, they probably figured that they were exempt from don't mess with the natural order, because they thought that they were, that it was kind of their place to do it in the first, that they were the ones who were supposed to be messing with it if it was going to be messed with. So, the comment about, you got the human peasants that are getting involved now. And it was always interesting to me on the show that it was the angels that looked down on human beings so much, whereas the demons didn't. They may have thought, oh, well, I'm more powerful or whatever, but because they needed a human body in order to do things, but angels did too on earth. But it was always interesting to me, the people who were, that, traditionally the angels are supposed to be the good guys. They were the ones that really had, not all of them, but for the majority of them, had a poor opinion of humanity. But I really do think that they felt as though, well, we can remake this place the way we want. That's what heaven's saying. Well, we can use these people to, like Zechariah, and that they wanted this war, and it's like, okay, well, we can use these people to do what we want. So it's okay if we mess with the natural order, but no, we can't have humans coming through and doing it. And I think from Sam and Dean's perspective, when they tried to stop, they would try to stop some of that was being done by, these otherworldly beings, if you want to call them that, other than the supernatural beings that occurred in Earth, in their world, or on Earth. That, that was one thing, because they're also trying to keep, more of a balance of, okay, well, once they came into the idea of not all supernatural creatures are bad, they don't all need to be just automatically gotten rid of, just by virtue of what they are. They were more willing to pay attention to who they are. Once they got on board with that idea, it was, they're trying to keep more of a balance in their own world, I think, and working to, make that happen. Now, they didn't always agree, because I can't remember her name, the one who was the friend of Sam's from when they were younger, and
Amy Pond.
yeah. And then Dean did not agree with that. But in any case, I don't know if that answers your question, but those are some of the things that I think that they were trying to do, was trying to, maybe not restore a natural order, because that's not really their place, but to try to keep a balance in the natural world that they had to live in.
Okay.
That's aside from all of the interference that they would get, especially from heaven. They actually had a lot more trouble from heaven than they did from hell, when it comes down to it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Beth?
First of all, I would have to say, who gets to define the natural order? I mean, is it automatically heaven? Do humans get to define what they want their natural order to be? So I think maybe that's something that Sam and Dean kind of had the same question of, well, who gets to decide that? And why do you think you're the one who gets to determine how things are supposed to be? But going back to what you said about the butterfly effect, I think, to me, some of the most significant things that had ripple effects were some of the, on the grand scale, smaller things, like Mary being brought back to life. The woman had been dead for a long time, and all of a sudden she's back, and she is very much a warrior. And so she is out there, hunting and killing and fighting, and she's interacting with, the British men of letters, and with her own sons, and all of those lives that she affected, or, wiped off the face of the planet, once she came back, were all affected because Chuck chose to bring her back from the dead. And so it just had this incredible far-reaching effect because of what a powerful, sometimes destructive woman she could be. And another one that comes to mind for me, for as many times as Sam and Dean died and were brought back, probably to me, one of the most significant is when Sam was able to live only because he was possessed by Gadriel. Because then you've got an angel who is really affecting the cosmic order for his own selfish purposes. And again, all of those actions that Sam takes after that point where he's been possessed, none of those things would have happened if he had just died like he was supposed to, according to the natural order. So, you could argue that everything he did right up until the end of the show, none of those would have happened if he had not been possessed by Gadriel. So some of these things that seem small and more like changes on a personal level still had incredible far-reaching effects.
Well, it would have been interesting if Mary hadn't come back. And how would Sam and Dean have originally encountered the British men of letters? And how would they have dealt with them without Mary's interference there and participation and all of that? It would have been a very different story arc.
Absolutely.
British men of letters had a very different idea about the cosmic order and their idea of what was right and what was wrong, and that their idea of right must triumph over all. They were a whole other thing.
Well, and that leads me to the next question, which is, people have debated free will versus predestination for millennia. And that was really at the heart of Supernatural. Do we have free will, or are we destined to something? And is that destiny locked in? And that leads me to ask, is there such was the natural order a construct that never actually existed? It was an excuse, it was a framework, it was a concept, but given how fluid, flexible, and often broken it was it actually real, or was it just trotted out as an excuse when somebody wanted to say, well, you can't do that because it will change the natural order? We didn't care about that 5 minutes ago, but when you do it, it's wrong. Was it real? Carol?
I think you're right. I think that it did get used as more of a construct. And the reason I say that is because I think when people use the term natural order, we kind of get the impression, if you don't look at it, if you don't try to dig too deeply under the surface, typically I think people think that it usually means is that you don't mess with things like life and death. That's pretty much, the bottom line. Now, people can take a different philosophical approach, and you can look at it from, there are all kinds of ways to look at it, I suppose, from a political point of view or an economic point of view or whatever. But I think that you're right in terms of it being kind of a construct. It's an easy term to kind of throw out there to say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that because it goes against the natural order. And as you pointed out, but it's okay if we do it. Because at the same time, the whole show that's what they did the whole time. It was everybody trying to go against the natural order. So, that could have been a subtitle of the show, or, like we break the natural, I don't know. But in any case, I do think that it was used as, this kind of hazy, supposed system that not much of anybody really followed. Maybe they believed in some form of it on some level, but they sure didn't stick to it.
Well, in the strictest sense, if it's wrong to mess with the natural order, then there should be no hospitals, because you have a heart attack, well, must be your time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Any kind of disease, well, the natural order says you're toast. So from that sense, there's this nice construct, but we break it all the time, even on a mortal level. And this, I think Supernatural just elevated it to bigger issues, but right. Same thing of guy has a heart attack. Do you bring him back or not? Are you messing with the natural order? Well, you know, it all depends. If it's you with the heart attack, you really want people messing with that.
Yeah, and
long as we-
part of that is opinion too. I mean, or not opinion, but it has to do with when you're talking about, because, you know, for many, many years now, people have been able to be saved from having a heart attack. So it's, you know, it's something that is common. But at some point in time in history, if somebody was lying there having a heart attack, then maybe there were people who thought, oh, we just need to stand, they're going, and you know, oh, this is it, you know, that kind of thing, because I didn't know how to stop it.
Yeah.
Well, we bring them back as long as they come back the same person.
Which
and not
almost never
someone
happens.
else, you know, sometimes dead is better.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, that's the wrong series, right?
Uh,
Sorry, we were doing
I'm
Supernatural.
thinking of
We weren't doing
Flies.
that.
Yeah, it was, well,
Sorry.
again,
Sorry, Pet Cemetery. No, sorry.
so what do you think about natural order, predestination, destiny, free will as being just a construct that gets trotted out there, or is it actually real? Elektra.
In our reality,
Well, in our reality or in the show, I mean,
well,
you know,
I mean, in the show, clearly, if Chuck knew everything that was going to happen, he would have been bored to tears. So he gave them a box where there was, you know, a theoretical cosmic order, and then within that box, they had free will to do whatever they want. And when they broke it, he went, "They're breaking it." And as long as they were going to do what he wanted at the end, and it would be brother versus brother, which is his favorite ending, he was cool with it. But, you know, everybody else who had their part to play, who were also, you know, under Chuck's general control, except for Death, who'd been around forever until he got killed. Everyone else thought that they were important and that they got to be pissed off when the boys didn't do what they wanted.
okay.
Everybody had their own, you know, everybody is the hero of their own story. And the guys in heaven said, no, they're not behaving. We want them to go away. And the people in hell said, we want them to come down here so we can torture them forever.
Right.
And they said, no, we're going to stay alive and kill monsters and save people because that's what we do.
Okay. Beth?
Well, I think going back to what you were saying, Carol, about for us on a human level with advancements in, you know, medicine and things like that, the natural order is a constantly evolving concept, you know, and it's going to be different depending on the time and depending on, you know, where you are in the world possibly. But for the Winchesters, you know, I feel like the natural order was always sort of an ideal that heaven was never able to see realized, because I have a hard time believing that Sam and Dean were the first ones to ever come along in human history to be disruptors. Certainly, maybe they were the most disruptive, but I'm sure that before them, there were people who were still challenging heaven's authority and still challenging the way things ran, both not just on earth, but, you know, in heaven and hell as well. So I really do think that whole natural order thing was an ideal, but certainly something that never truly existed. Because even hearing the angels talk about things that had happened in the past, you know, they were warriors. They had fought many, many battles. They had dealt with you know, rebellious people many times over the years. And so I think it's something that they kept hoping to work toward it and probably never really made much progress at all.
Well, if you think about it, Lucifer's rebellion was the first rebellion against the natural order.
Absolutely.
So
Well, but
that was kind of, go ahead.
Lucifer had angel radio.
Mhm.
Okay. And he could talk to all of the angels for good or for bad. The difference between now and things that happened in the past is we have a lot more communication in our world now, and therefore in the world of supernatural, than 50 years ago. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have all of these other apps that people use to communicate. 50 years ago, people didn't carry cell phones. So the idea of being able to instantly communicate and therefore coordinate things just didn't exist. So big rebellions like that, where we could all gather together and attack at the same time, just didn't happen.
Now oh, go ahead, Carol.
I just wanted to say but to your point about asking about free will, in terms of the show, I think that was, definitely one of the themes throughout the show, because one of the things that the brothers always said to each other was, there's always another way. We always have a choice, or sometimes when one of them was making a bad decision, the other one would say, but you do have a choice. This isn't your only option. And so I think that for them, that was one of the biggest, that was like a tipping point for them, when it became more apparent that maybe they didn't have it, or that was what Chuck wanted them to think, that they didn't have ultimate control over, the way things go. And I think that people can get confused between free will on a personal level and the fact that it doesn't mean that you can control everything that happens in your life or everything that's around you. It just means that you can choose to behave the way that you want to behave. And I think that was some of what they wrestled with, throughout the series.
Okay. Now in The Life of Asa Fox, when no, I'm sorry, in the aftermath of getting Sam and Dean out of the secret Black Ops place after the president and all of that, when Cass kills Billy, the threat was that if a Winchester didn't die, there would be cosmic consequences. And a whole lot of other things happened after that. I guess you could think of them as cosmic consequences. If that hadn't happened, would Amara have happened? If that hadn't happened, would the fight with Chuck have happened? What do you think Billy meant? Or was she just trying to intimidate them with something that sounded scary, but really didn't exist? Carol?
Yeah, I think it was the latter, to be honest with you, because I don't think, if you look at it from one point of view, just about every season there were cosmic consequences going on. That was pretty much the whole show, or at least I would say after the involvement of angels anyway, because then you get more of a feel of whole cosmos and not just fighting off demons from hell, essentially, even if they were ones that lived most of the time on Earth. But
Okay. Elektra?
I agree with Carol. I think it was just a threat from Billy that she was going to make Big Ooga Booga if they didn't do what she wanted them to do, because, she did what they wanted. You have to have we made a bargain. And honestly, I think they intended on keeping that bargain. It was Cass who stepped in and disagreed. The one thing that the boys tend to do is, we made an agreement, we're going to stick to it. If you don't have your honor, what do you have? And Billy was very, very rigid about sense of order and all of that. And she was very, very pissed that they kept dodging death.
Well, and if you think about it, Cass killing her, the other immortal supernatural being who should have had a sense of natural order and cosmic consequences, if it was real,
right,
is the one who stepped in and killed her because he didn't want to let his friends die. So if anybody should have known, you'd think it would have been Cass, but there you have it. Beth?
All right, first of all, I apologize if you guys can hear train horns in the background. They, I swear they turn on the trains in this town about 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's just constant. Sorry, what was the question?
Cosmic, where they
Thank
read
you.
was really just
With
blowing
Billy. I had my answer already, then I got totally distracted by the train. Yeah, I think Billy was being a little bit of a drama queen when she was saying that. But I can also understand it from the perspective of death, that if one human being keeps getting a free pass and gets to come back to life and stay alive, it's setting a bit of a dangerous precedent. And so I could see how maybe death would be a little hesitant to let that continue, because who's going to be the next person that comes and demands some kind of special
Right.
treatment? So I think maybe the cosmic consequences was her just being a bit of a drama queen and a fatalist, but certainly I could understand that reaction from her perspective.
It could have been a warning of sorts, you know, that she was kind of playing it up. In other words,
Yeah.
that she's warning them, if you don't do this, something worse is going to happen later. But if it was really, if the way she said it, it did sound as more of a threat than just a warning.
Which
Yeah.
is just funny because it's like it never happened before in every major mythology and religion.
Right.
There's always somebody who came back from the dead.
Right. And not just once. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe she was just going, enough already. You've seen this.
Oh,
Bye.
yeah. No, she wanted to take care of everybody that should have been dead. And
It's
she
true.
was going to take out all the apocalypse world people and everybody that had come back from the dead for any reason. She wanted to clean everybody up and make it nice and tidy. She apparently was very OCD. I mean, her library was absolutely spotless.
It was.
It was. Well, folks, as usual, we have blown through our time. So before we wrap up, please let everybody know where they can find you online, starting with Carol.
Yes, if you go to Facebook and plug in DragonCon Urban Fantasy, it will take you right to the track Facebook page, which is active all year long. And you can go to YouTube, also put in DragonCon Urban Fantasy, and you will go directly to our channel, which has both all of our 15 Supernatural Rewind episodes on there that we did over the course of, well, over 15 months, but with a break in the middle there, or not in the middle, but after the first 5, I think we took a break because we had, the actual con that I had to deal with. So then after that, we started back up and went straight through. But all of those are on there. Lots of other media content and author interviews and virtual author panels also that we did in 2020, since we couldn't have the in-person con.
Okay, Elektra.
I'm Elektra Hammond. You can find me at untilmidnight.com, and I'm at Elektra at Wandering Shop on Mastodon.
Very good. Beth.
Probably the easiest place to start with me is my website, bethdolgner.com. And to see me in person instead of online, you can find me hanging out on the DragonCon Urban Fantasy track.
Yes, you can. Yes. And
Me
Gail
too.
too.
And I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. If you spell those right, you'll find me on pretty much all the major social media. I also run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook, and I write for the Winchester Family Business blog. I'm often on the DragonCon Urban Fantasy track, but most of the time you can find me here on Continual. So thank you all so much for being here tonight. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up on Continual, so we'll see you online.